we're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit
I
card debt.
still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Our sponsor for this episode is our 14-day video script challenge.
Yes, we are sponsoring our own show.
Yes, we are.
Welcome back to From Poop to Gold. I'm Benton Crane, your co-host and the CEO of Harmon Brothers. Today I am joined by a very special guest. I have with me today on the line David Bayer. Welcome to the show, David.
Ben, thanks for having me.
David, tell our listeners, who is David Bayer and what do you do?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends which day you ask me. But most recently, I'm the president of a company called David Bayer Businesses. We're a coaching and training company. We work with entrepreneurs to help them grow their businesses. And at the core of all that is really teaching what a lot of people are referring to as personal development 2.0. It's really leading edge understandings and methodologies and technologies for helping people use their mind to begin to rewire and redesign their own brains. So to fundamentally change the way that they think, because we believe that your beliefs and your perceptions and the way that you think really dictate the quality of life and ultimately whether or not you achieve your full potential. And so we get to work with really extraordinary, people every day who feel called to a higher purpose and a higher potential in their lives.
So what's the difference between personal development 1.0 versus 2.0?
I think that, and it's a distinction, not a criticism. There's an evolution of self-help and personal development. And I think for the last 30 or 40 years, we've been in a space of personal growth, which has been a lot of philosophy and understanding that we shouldn't be listening to our fears and understanding that our limiting beliefs are holding us back. There's been a lot of motivation. There's been a lot of inspiration. But what we have seen over the last several years is we have an entire generation of people who have become acutely self-aware of what's holding them back, but have no idea what to do about it. Okay. And so as you sort of emerge into the 2.0 version of personal growth, it's really understanding this distinction of how to use your mind, or what we would call mental technologies or mental concepts and neuroplasticity, to begin to eliminate those habitual patterns of thinking that are causing you distress in your life and also preventing you from doing more and being more, and consciously redesigning who you are, which is a really exciting, understanding that we have the capacity to not only change the way that we habitually think, but as we do so, it literally transforms our neurobiology, our genetic expression, and who we are. So that's sort of the difference between good old motivation and inspiration and what we're talking about with transformation.
That's amazing. That's a subject that I would love to do a deep dive into and understand it more. Here's a question for you. One of my personal mentors, Paul Allen, for several years, he's one of the co-founders of Ancestry.com. This is not the Microsoft Paul Allen. This is the Ancestry.com Paul Allen. But for several years, he was the strengths evangelist at Gallup, and he kind of traveled the world spreading this idea that psychology for so many years was focused on identifying our weaknesses and what's holding us back, and he and the people around him at Gallup were trying to flip that conversation on its head and say, instead, focus on your strengths and what makes you a superhuman. What is your superpower, and how do you lean into that and run with that? Is that somewhat aligned with what you're saying, where it used to be identifying what's holding you back, and now it's focusing on what to do about it and how to push forward? Are those aligned at all?
I think so. I think that's part of the conversation, understanding that there's an intelligent design at work in life. And we can see that from a meta example like the cosmos, down into how sort of the perfection of how life interacts on Earth, down into the different species and inside the human being, at the intelligence inside the body. And the different species are designed with different strengths and capabilities, and those are intentional, right? They should be used. And so every human being has an intelligent design to their life and to their human being machine. And so that's an important thing to understand, while simultaneously understanding that over time we construct a personality. Mm-hmm. We can construct a perspective of ourselves that oftentimes has its roots in the opinions of others, and those opinions were not conducive to us operating with our full expression and our full capacity. And so we've been living, most of us, most of the time, in a very limited way. And so as we start to unpack that personality and create a blank canvas to operate off of, we open up more possibilities in our life while leveraging, right, the skills and the gifts and the talents that we've been uniquely given through intelligent design.
Wow, incredible. How did you get here? What was your path like?
My background was always in entrepreneurship and early internet marketing. So in 2004, 2005, I started getting into search engine optimization. I started a company in 2005 that was a venture-backed company that leveraged an acute understanding of how search engines worked with lead generation in the financial services sector. And it was around 2009 when the markets crashed and that business became very challenging, that I also realized that I had a drug and alcohol addiction, and I had been living a very unmanageable life for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so in what at the time felt like extreme chaos, I started working a 12-step program. Mm-hmm. And that was my entree to this idea that there was a power greater than myself. Mm-hmm. And simultaneously, a number of things happened. I went to an airport, and I wasn't a big reader, but this kind of book called off from the shelf at me. And I went over to the book and grabbed it, and it was called Awakening the Buddha Within. So while I was working a 12-step program, I started studying the tenets of Buddhism. One of my employees left a book called Kingdom Principles by Miles Monroe on my desk and said, "Hey, I don't know why, I just had a feeling you might be interested in reading this," which made no sense whatsoever because I was not an avid reader. And so then I started looking at Christ's interpretation of the world. And I saw a pattern, because that was my background, was search engine algorithms. I saw that there was something really profound, a message that was being communicated across wisdom teachings, across the spectrum of science and spirituality. And I became really obsessed with human performance. And in particular, because I was working through my addiction, I became fascinated with the addicted brain and neuroplasticity. So all of that really hit at the same time. And opened up sort of a rabbit hole that I've never really climbed back out of.
Was there sort of a quote unquote rock bottom moment that kind of like was a turning point where you realized, like, okay, I can't continue like this. Something's got to change. And what did that moment look like for you? What did it feel like?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever actually shared this part of my story publicly. But it was a period of time where I was really trying to manage my drinking and drug use. And my drug of choice was marijuana. And which is why I figured out how search engines worked. But I was trying to manage it for a while. And we had this thing where I lived called Wine Down Wednesdays. Everybody would go out for wine, and I hadn't had wine for like a month because I was trying to manage my addiction. And I went out, I had a glass of wine, which led to another and another and another. And I ended up, being out at a club till 2 a.m. And I came home the next day, and I woke up in the morning and my body hurt everywhere. I couldn't figure out why. I had been working out for a while, so it wasn't like a new muscle pain. And I went into work. I worked my normal day as CEO of my company, and I came home at around 7 o'clock at night. And it was the first time I'd ever blacked out, and it all came rushing back to like what had happened the night before. I was at a bar. I started something with some guys. 3 of them jumped me. I got thrown out by bouncers, and I was like, this isn't who I am. Like, I'm not quite sure how I got to where I'm at. And fortunately, my brother was in the addiction treatment space a few years, ahead of me. He had gone through a drug and alcohol addiction. And so I called him and I said, what do I need to do? And he said, you need to start working a 12-step program. And at that time, it was like this, it didn't really make sense. It's like, what do you mean I'm an addict? What do you mean I can't just stop this? What do you mean I have to start going to a 12-step meeting every day? Like, I don't have time for that. Yeah. And so that was my rock bottom, which, as was also the greatest blessing in my life was when that happened, because it was the beginning of the beginning of the transition into who I am now, even though there have been a bunch of different milestones, and the beginning of developing the understanding and the capacity to actually have a life that I love. Yeah,
that's one of the consistent themes that we pick up on this podcast, is that pretty much everyone looks backwards at kind of, their poop moment and identifies it as kind of this defining moment that helped shape them and make them who they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's a unique emotional experience, because it's not so much that for me at least, that my self-confidence was shaken. It was an awareness that there was never any real confidence there from the beginning, right? That it was an awareness that like everything that I thought supported my self-identity wasn't real and wasn't created out of anything that I really cared about. And so for a while there was a holding on to it, because when I finally let go of all of it, it's terrifying, because you're in a free fall. You know, I'm not cool like I thought I was. All of the significance I built up so I didn't have to deal with my pain really means nothing. I've been a jerk to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. The career that I've spent the last 15 years building up was all driven by a false sense of identity and an inauthenticity. I mean, it's a smashing moment.
It's like shattering your world.
Yeah, and I find that it comes over time. Like, I don't know that the human psyche has the ability to take it all in at once. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it was a process and an unfolding, you know, for over the course of a year. Of hitting these new revelations that everything I had built up was false. And you know, it's interesting because you look back as you articulately expressed, and when we realize that those poop moments are our gold moments, right? And one of the greatest gifts from that has been my ability, and obviously it's a work in process, but to start experiencing your new poop moments as gold almost immediately. Yeah. Right? Because, you know, it's kind of like fool me once, you know, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's like, you know, once you do it enough, then you literally start to retrain your nervous system, and you're like, okay, I'm in one of those moments again. Wow, this must be something really, you know, special on the other side of this. But at that time back then, without having any context, I mean, it was the hardest time of my life.
I'm so glad you described it like that, because it was a few years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. The name of the book is slipping my mind, but I read this book about a guy who served in World War II as a chaplain. And he's in the middle of World War II, and everything around him is just horrific. You know, people are dying left and right. People are sick. There's hunger. There's starvation. Just all of these horrible things going on. And in the midst of that, he's studying. I think he was studying the Bible, if I remember correctly. And he came to a verse that instructed him to be grateful for all things. And he's like looking around, and he's like, all things, like, how am I supposed to be grateful for this? Like, this is horrific. This is terrible. I can't be grateful for this. But as he thought and studied and pondered about that, you know, directive to be grateful for all things, he decided to try to put it into practice and actually express gratitude for what he was experiencing, even though it was horrific. And I remember as I read that, I was like, that makes so much sense, because my whole life I've always heard people talk about horrible things in the past tense. They're always like, you know, I'm so grateful I went through it. It made me who I am. You know, it was so hard, but I appreciate it so much. But when they're talking in the present tense, it's always words like, oh, just get through it, you know, endure it, you know, this will pass, you know, those type of things. And I realized that disconnect. I was like, wait a second, why can't you be grateful in the moment as you're going through something hard and appreciate it for what it is? And so as I tried to put that into practice in my own life, I was blown away at how much more manageable the hard things that we go through are when you can stop for a second and appreciate the journey that you're going through. And so just in conversation with you, that's kind of the first time I've ever heard someone else express that same thing. And I just appreciate the heck out of that.
Yeah, the classic text there is man's search for meaning, right? And the current global situation is certainly contextually relevant to that understanding too, right? Is it really possible that every challenge and every crisis we go through is a gift? If we look at our own lives and we look back historically at it, we see it to be, I believe for most of us, 100% true, right? There may be some instances that we haven't been able to recontextualize with clarity yet. And so the key, and it actually speaks to a lot of what we're, you know, working with individuals and entrepreneurs to learn how to do, is to retrain your nervous system so that in the present moment challenges, even though you don't yet have optics on how it's true, you can experience it as gold, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you do that, you conserve a tremendous amount of energy and suffering and worry and, emotional states that cause us to take action that are completely counterproductive to the results that we're trying to produce when we're in the midst of a challenge. And so it goes back to that image of, Jesus as the disciples are, on top of the ship and the winds have kicked up, coming up and rebuking the winds and being unshakable in the midst of the storm. And that is a practice, right? And to your point, like as you begin to learn how to apply it imperfectly at first, everything starts to change.
Yeah. So I don't know when this interview will go live exactly. I leave that in producer Keith's hands, but we're recording it right in the midst of the COVID-19 chaos. States all over the country are on lockdown. In fact, I think, David, you just mentioned that Florida just barely went on lockdown today. So it's been interesting because as I'm in the midst of trying to lead my company, and at the same time I'm trying to comfort my family and give my kids, reassurances through this, I've had a couple of moments where kind of the stress and the uncertainty was kind of starting to get under my skin, and I could feel myself really kind of letting the stress shut me down a little bit. And so I tried to implement this exact practice that we're talking about right now, where I actually stood back and I expressed real gratitude for getting to experience what we're experiencing right now. I mean, history is literally being written, as we speak, and we're going through these incredible experiences that historians are going to be talking about for years and years and years, and our grandkids will look back at this and study it in textbooks and stuff. And we're experiencing it, and I think we have the opportunity to stop and be grateful for this experience and what we're going through and all the things that we're going to get to learn from it. It's actually kind of awesome when you think about it in that light.
Yeah, the current situation is incredibly dualistic because on one hand, the Indian Prime Minister or the Supreme Court just came out and said, we have a bigger problem than COVID-19. And it's the fact that as a result of the shutdown of COVID-19, millions of people are going to die of starvation in our country. And we see how, elderly are victims of the virus. And we see how we have an unprepared medical force, like God bless them, that is sacrificing themselves to be the front line against all of this. And so on one hand, we see all of that. On the other hand, we walk around our neighborhood and kids are drawing hopscotch on the sidewalk again. And people who haven't ridden a bike in years are riding bikes, and people are getting out in the sun and grounding their feet in the grass. And you see a decrease in the carbon footprint and carbon emissions around the world. There's so many benefits as a result of this thing. And so, yeah, it's the acknowledgement that there are challenges and we need to be resourceful in overcoming them, while simultaneously understanding that what's happening at the same time through intelligent design is an incredible gift and a blessing. And when you can operate in that way, then you can be where you've been, which is solid for yourself, and then creating solidity around you, right, with your family and your team, or get caught up in the hysteria and the panic, which, doesn't accurately reflect fully the present moment and what's going on.
I love it, man. This subject lights a fire in me.
I can tell. Yeah, me too. That's why we do what we do.
Where can our listeners and I personally learn more? Where should we be following you?
Yeah, best place is davidbayer.com, Bayer, davidbayer.com. There's a download of my ebook. It's been downloaded over 200,000 times over the last couple of years. It's called Mind Hack. And so it talks about some of the fundamental principles that we're talking about here. I'm on Instagram with DavidBayer33. We've got our YouTube channel. And we actually just created a group where people are coming together during this time. And I don't know, again, Benton, when this is going to broadcast, but it's called David Bayer Citadel. As we're bringing people together and really unifying people behind this right perception that you and I are talking about, and supporting them, through teachings, trainings, community, like-minded tribe, during this transition in this period of time.
Fantastic. Any final tips that you would have for our audience? So our audience is largely entrepreneurs and marketers. Yeah. If you had to part with one piece of advice, what would that be?
So if you were to ask me what's the number one thing you could do to grow your business and make a greater impact and be more market differentiated and do everything that you want to do around your business, one of the things we teach is that there's only two states of being, meaning there are powerful states of being or primal states of being. And powerful states are states that feel good, like excitement, joy, curiosity, and passion. And primal states are states that don't feel good, like any form of fear or jealousy or anger or boredom. And you're always in one state of other being or the other, and you're never in two at the same time. And all of your resource, all of your incredible messaging, all of your ideas, all of your leadership capacity, that all comes from being in a powerful state, which is the expression of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the number one thing that you could be doing as an entrepreneur is actually developing a practice to relax, because we've habituated ourselves to being in fight or flight. And a lot of the hustle and grind mentality around business growth is related to this. And even though you may be achieving some things, you're not achieving nearly what you could be achieving if you were operating from a flow state of rest and relaxation and from a powerful state of being. So this current situation has actually given me an opportunity to do it 4 times a day for 10 to 20 minutes a day. I'm doing something that is training my nervous system to be in parasympathetic, whether it's Tai Chi or meditation or going for a walk around the block or Om chanting. But it's the most powerful thing you can do to step into your next level of power. And especially if you're creating through your business as an entrepreneur, there's so much focus on the strategies, which believe me, I appreciate. I'm a business strategist as well. But the key to actually having it all is for us to be operating from a powerful state and developing a practice to support that.
I love it. Love it. David, thank you for coming on the show.
Ben, thank you. This has been awesome. And what a great way to spend my self-quarantine.
Yeah, and it's been fantastic to get to know you. For our listeners, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode. As entrepreneurs and small businesses, we all kind of reach that point where we know we've created something awesome and we want to share it with the world, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that very next step that can oftentimes be really intimidating or really scary, or you just don't know where to go next, right? And the beautiful thing about this 14-day script challenge is you get your hand held from, okay, you have this cool product, now let's go research and find the exact way to present it and message it to the world in a way that resonates and gets people excited and they're ready to swipe their credit card and purchase. And in the 14-day script challenge, you get the opportunity to go through that step by step with our writers who have done it dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah, you actually watch us go through each of the steps ourselves and create it with a real client, a real product, and it's a real campaign that's out there that's been very successful.
That's right. And the feedback that we've had on this thing has just been phenomenal. I mean, we get comment after comment and emails flowing in from people all over the world who have just raved about the impact that this has had on their business.
People tell us over and over again, it is just a huge value punch for the investment for this 14-day script challenge, and really gave them the tool set they needed to walk through it and make it happen.
And we've had dozens of students who have successfully taken the challenge, written their script, launched their ad campaigns, and driven success for their business. It's pretty amazing.
For more information, go to hpros.co/script.